Before we officially start this video, if you have not seen the results of the previous round, the link will be in the description below and in the information tab on the top right corner of the video. Last time on Total Drama Bracket, the Sweet 16 went underway and we got to see some epic battles within the first round. There were plenty to talk about between these 16 teams, but in the end, 8 had to be sent home. We had some heartbreaking defeats and others, not so much. But all of that is in the past as we get ahead into the Elite 8. Justin, Duncan, Lashana, Owen, DJ, Harold, Courtney, and Heather will fight to the limit to see who will make it to the Final Four. The intensity has never been higher, the battle for glory has never been greater. Who's got what it takes to make it into the next round? We'll find out here on Total Drama Bracket. Things are getting a lot more intense here in this bracket. From slimming down from the 22 teams we had started with, we now only have 8 left that will help us decide who is the most interesting and most developed character throughout the first 3 seasons of Total Drama. This video will consist of 4 matchups. These matchups will be DJ versus Courtney, Duncan versus Owen, Justin versus Lashana, and Harold versus Heather. As a reminder, we are looking at the unique personalities and overall story arcs of each character and compare them with each other to see which one is better than who. Without further ado, let's begin with our first bout, DJ versus Courtney. DJ had one of, if not, the easiest route to get to the Elite 8. With only having to go against Trent in the Sweet 16, that was a very easy decision for me because DJ was a whole lot more interesting than Trent. However, it's not going to be an easy task going up against Courtney. Courtney easily had the hardest road to make it to the Elite 8 with passing both Gwen and Izzy. Still, this can make an interesting matchup. Both characters have solid personalities that gives you a strong sense of connection and interest. For DJ, he is clearly one of the nicest characters in the game and you can't help but feel sympathy for his struggles throughout his overall arc. While for Courtney, she has one of the strongest wills to win out of the Elite 8 and was put in Heather's shoes as a character you would want to see take a deserving L once she was featured in action. Also, both characters had some bad blemishes in their arc that made me think less of them. Starting with DJ, his World Tour arc revolved around a supposed curse that cursed him to hurt innocent animals when it was really all in his head. The only way to break the curse in his eyes is to take an L on purpose instead of quitting. The curse made him look like more of an idiot than anything else, and the fact that he wasn't willing to say I quit like he did in action did not help me think otherwise. While for Courtney, that World Tour love triangle absolutely murdered her, Gwen, and Duncan, who we'll talk about later, as well-rounded characters. It damaged Courtney because it turned her into something that she should have never been, and that's being completely dependent on one character, specifically Alejandra. I understand that her heart was torn to shreds and Alejandra was a villain with a lot of charm, but it just made her seem much weaker with her doing everything that he says. Plus, he was one of the reasons that she was eliminated, and she was still willing to be his minion. Still, overall wise, her arcs were a lot more impactful than DJ, so I would have to give the first ticket to the Final Four to Courtney. The next battle will be Duncan versus Owen. So, after collabing with Jay and Noah on a hot take video for Total Drama and being on Castoon, I do see Owen in a little bit of a new light. Even then, he has a very tough opponent going against Duncan. Both characters have been featured in all 3 seasons and has made some sort of impact in each one. Owen is another character that had a pretty easy road to the Elite 8, defeating the poor Roach in Ezekiel, while Duncan had a more challenging opponent going up against a fan favorite in Cody. Personality-wise, they both are very strong in the opposite aspect of each other. For Owen, he's easily considered the most fun-loving out of all of the 22 competitors. He's always been the most ecstatic contestant during his runs and it's not someone you could really hate. While Duncan has a little bit more of a spice to him, given that he is one of the meanest players in the game. Duncan plays the role of the bad boy very well, and he easily has some of the more interesting interactions with the other contestants. We do get to see their other sides respectively too. With Owen playing the mole in action when he returned to the game, we start to see him be more sadistic as the game went on, while for Duncan, we do get to see his softer side throughout the island. It would have been nice if both had the opportunity to show that out a little more. They both also have their blemishes, especially Duncan and his triangle in World Tour. As I've said throughout this tournament time and time again, it really drained a lot of the interest in Duncan at this point for me. While for Owen, there weren't a lot of times where we get to see him push over the edge. The biggest one was for being the mole in action, but outside of that, there wasn't too many moments where he was in a clash that wasn't comedic. This one is going to be a close call, but I just have to give it to Owen. While Owen doesn't have a whole lot going for him personality-wise outside of being the lovable guy that's loyal to his friends, his character was much more consistent and was involved in a few character arcs that helped increase his interest as a character. While for Duncan, he probably could have passed on if it wasn't for that atrocious love triangle that was not needed. So Owen will be the second to stamp his name in the Final Four. Our next battle will be Justin versus Lashana. Both characters' road to the Elite 8 were pretty easy to go through, with Justin passing Beth and Tyler because of his revamped personality and action and story arcs being more interesting, while Lashana defeated an extra body that no one cared about in Katie. When it comes to the amount of screen time throughout the first 3 seasons, Lashana takes it by far. She was a part of the large portion of Island in action and a small portion of the World Tour. Meanwhile, Justin was kicked off very early in the Island and never participated in the World Tour. It's a shame too, considering I think Justin is a very underrated character that was built very well in action. Justin taking the role as a villain really piqued my interest in what he was going to do to get ahead in the game. Plus, it helped give action something that Total Drama was lacking in the other 2 seasons we're talking about right now. It gave us more than one villain to root against. Still, Lashana took a huge advantage of her time spent in Island in action. She has a very distinct personality and she had many obstacles that made her look strong and weak when it needed to. Her rivalry against Heather is one of the most iconic in the series as a whole, while her struggles gaining her friends' trust she broke after lying and talking crap about them behind their backs gave that big flaw she never showed during the Island. However, it sucks that her role was diminished hard in World Tour, being one of the many, and I do mean many, of Alejandro's victims. At the same time, it's nowhere near enough of a knock to not move her on over Justin. So it's a no-brainer she will take the 3rd spot. Our final matchup will be Harold versus Heather. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. Jason, why the hell did you have this matchup last? Well, because this one is the hardest for me personally. How is that, you ask? Because Harold is my favorite character growing up and is a huge dark horse to be one of the best characters of the 22. And Heather is a favorite overall for a good percent of people. Heather has had an easier role with getting past Jeff in the preliminary, who spent most of his screen time out of the game than on, and passing Sadie for the same reasons as Lashana beating Katie in the Sweet 16. While for Harold, he had the second hardest road, outlasting Lindsay having a more unique personality, plus more moments in his run, and getting past a fan favorite in Noah for simply having stronger story arcs compared to what little his opponent had in the Sweet 16. Both characters have been featured in all 3 seasons, but Heather was put in the spotlight when World Tour came around. She completed one of her biggest story arcs in all 3 seasons, being in the final 2 and became Alejandro's love interest, while Harold was knocked off very early because Alejandro, Jesus Christ man. Anyways, when it came to large moments, they both had quite a number of moments throughout their tenures in each season. Harold had his moments from cutting off Duncan's love interest in Island, to standing up to Duncan in action, to his self-sacrifice in the World Tour, just to name a few. Heather had her moments from the deadly kiss with Trent in Island, to making up with Lashana in action, to her conquering the sly fox in Alejandro. Neither of them had moments that took me out of it when it came to their development, and we saw their other side respectively. They've had a large pool of both rivals and allies that gave us a good number of relationships. Harold's relationship with Duncan was very well paced and built to a strong bond between the two. The bully story arc checked all the boxes for the 2 seasons that it did run on, plus the two building some sort of respect with each other made me like the duo. Heather's biggest rivalry with Lashana was one of the most iconic too, being handled differently with the two always bashing heads with each other, and learning about each other more gave them the sense of respect as well. Too bad it was completely forgotten in the World Tour when Lashana smacked her around a couple of times. Man. Yeah, this one is way too tough to pick out. Sadly, one person has to get the final spot. And that will belong to Heather. As much as I love Harold, I don't think I can pass him over Heather because of how much of an impactful character she has become. When you think Total Drama, she is one of the first names you will remember about the show. Her road to this point was one of the best in Total Drama history, and without that arc in the World Tour, I don't think it would be nearly as praised as it is now. So Heather will grab the final spot and wrap up the competitors for the Final Four. Thanks for watching this Bat Special. If you want to see more Total Drama content, click on the video link to the left. Click the subscribe and the bell icon to get the latest from me. Until then, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.